I may be in the toughest spot here between you and beer, so bear with me. Yeah, I should have just brought the beer with me. All right. As he said, Avner couldn't be here. I was thinking about giving the presentation in my best Israeli accent, but it's terrible. So we'll stick with English. And I figured calling myself out as a Texan is something that Texans do. You know, we're not Americans, we're Texans. I grew up in Dallas and had the good fortune of growing up as kind of this tech guy. I always wanted to go into computers and programming, and I was taking apart computers and putting them back together and breaking them. And my dad suffered through the $50 charges for me reversing an IDE cable, which was awful and just very embarrassing when I took it to the shop. But I've always had this passion for technology and went to go get a degree in information systems. And I was an ASP programmer for about 8 months. And I thought to myself, if I have to sit in this cubicle in front of the computer for 9 hours every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to shoot myself. So now I do the same thing, but I send email. And that makes me feel much better. So today, I wasn't quite sure what the audience was going to be like. I didn't know if you guys were going to be Uber developers, in which case I'm sure the previous presentation was like amazing manna from heaven. I unfortunately cannot speak to Boxy in that same way. So what I thought I would do is take you guys through, let's call it group therapy. So it's really easy when you're in a startup to sit and look at all the obstacles that are out in front of you and say, man, this is so tough, and really feel like maybe you're alone in that, but you're totally not. Whether you're a big, successful company or a really small startup that's just starting out, we all have issues that we face. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of go through a little bit about Boxy's history and what we've worked through and what we've learned. And then I will let you get on to beer. So when I first talked to Avner and I found out that he wouldn't be able to give the talk, I asked him, okay, so I have a room full of entrepreneurs and developers. What should I tell them? And he said, well, they shouldn't even be listening to you. This is typical Avner. This is what I deal with on a daily basis. And his point was somewhat correct. As entrepreneurs, we're the idea people, and we see something and we go after it, and we go full force. And a lot of times at Boxy, we get asked a lot about competition, and we say, it's hard to keep running forward as fast as you can when you're looking behind you. And I think that's very true of succeeding as a startup. Is you just got to be focused on your vision and make sure that that's your core. But that said, there are certainly things you can learn in the way of tactics that can help you along. So very quickly, I know a lot of you said you were Boxy users and you knew what we were, but I thought I would just tell you Boxy is essentially a really great way to bring TV shows, movies, music like Pandora, and photos from the internet to your TV. And you can either download us to your computer for free, or we're going to be embedded on TVs, set-top boxes, game consoles, and Blu-ray players. And the goal for us was really just to create an experience around browsing web content on the TV screen. And that was it. So above and beyond that, we also add social functionality. We can play stuff on your local machine, but you guys can learn more if you go to boxy.tv. So how did Boxy start? Essentially, it was 5 childhood friends who wanted to work together. And I have a great video that I want to show you about what happens when the friends that you have start becoming your business partners.
You have no idea of the magnitude of this thing. If she is allowed to infiltrate this world, then George Costanza, as you know him, ceases to exist. You see, right now, I have relationship George, but there is also independent George. That's the George you know, the George you grew up with. Movie George, coffee shop George, liar George, bawdy George.
I love that George.
Me too. And he's dying, Jerry. If Relationship George walks through this door, he will kill Independent George. A George divided against itself cannot stand.
So, as George here points out, when your worlds collide in terms of working with friends and having them become your business partners, it can be very tricky. It's hard taking orders from your best friend. It's hard figuring out, if somebody's CEO and somebody else is, head of development. How do their ownership stakes vary? How does their salary vary? Figuring out all those variables takes a very delicate hand and certain personalities and a willingness to work through things that I think we're really blessed at Boxy to have, but certainly something to think about as you go out and start up your own companies. So this is one thing that Abner keeps reinforcing to me is whenever we have a big decision to make, he'll say, "What is your gut telling you?" And at the founding of Boxy, the five guys, Gidon, Avner, Vulcan, Edan, and Tom, all decided they were going to put a date in front of themselves, quit their jobs, and without really knowing what they were going to do, that's exactly what they did. So a certain day came, they gave notice, they quit, they met up together, and brainstormed, okay, what could we do? And I think that speaks very much to their personalities. Is we're going to quit and then we'll figure it out. So in examining all of the things that they could do, they were all passionate about this software called XBMC, which stands for Xbox Media Center, and essentially was a way to hack your original Xbox and bring content from your home network, pipe it through the Xbox, and put it on your TV screen. And this was in 2007 that the company was founded. So at this time, Hulu had just started. YouTube was starting to gain steam. Facebook, MySpace, all these social networks were blowing up. And they thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to take XBMC to the next level and add internet content and add social functionality? And so that's what they set off to do. In addition, they looked around and they realized TV kind of sucks today. Now, TV provides a great function, and it does its job really well, but the interface for watching TV is terrible, and it really hasn't evolved in over a decade. So I can think of, the latest innovations would be, the things that come to my mind are video on demand. And if you're looking at that page, really the only thing missing is maybe some sparkles and an under construction sign, and you've got a web page from 1998. And then additionally, things like Red Zone for direct ticket. I think that's a pretty innovative service, but those are the only two that I can think of, and VOD really isn't all that amazing. So they noticed, additionally, that there was no way to share what you were watching. So you're watching TV, and it's very you and your television, you and the people watching TV with you, but there was no way to get past that and kind of share directly from the TV or get recommendations from your friends there. So that's what Boxy started out to do. So we started off wanting to make Boxy as a box. This was actually the initial design for a Boxy box. And back in 2007, when Avner and his friends went to VCs, they went to service providers, PR people, marketing people, all of them said, set-top boxes fail. We will not fund you. My former boss, Jeremy Toman, who built the Sling box, said, great idea. If you launch it as a box, I will not work with you. Certainly not what you want to hear from somebody who you're saying, here, I'll give you money and you help me out. And he said no. So we knew, Avner says, we knew they were crazy, but we decided to listen to them anyway. So they decided to launch a software, and I've been with the company since they did. And it gave us all sorts of benefits. So first and foremost, It meant that the guys knew what they were doing, since they came from the software world. It wasn't something outside of their domain of expertise. Secondly, being software distributed over the web means that I can go up to anybody on the street who happens to have an internet connection and get them a copy of Boxy for free. So I don't have to convince them to buy a $200 or $300 device to try us out and get excited about us. Additionally, because we were able to build a now 1.1 million user base that's strong and passionate about what we're doing, we're now able to go to content providers and say, hey, we have all these users who would love to get your content. We're able to go to device manufacturers and say, hey, you should embed our software because we already have 1 million people who are ready to go out and buy this thing tomorrow. And so it's had this huge benefit on the back end that we didn't really consider on the front end. And then additionally, what was really, really cool is that because we could get it into people's hands for free and because we were growing exponentially, we were able to adapt really quickly and be agile. So we ran a survey, figured out what people wanted in Boxy, and built it over the next 4 months. That was Netflix, Pandora, and Hulu. And we were also able to let people make the product what they wanted it to be. So we had developers continually asking for new features, going out and developing their own apps. We actually had somebody build a BBC application for us that's still there today and is the main way to access BBC's iPlayer on Boxy. So cool things like this started happening and started showing us that the community was really behind us. So once we had launched, it was now time to go out and raise some money. And normally there's a pretty straightforward process, and an ideal way that raising money works is you get some traction, you go talk to a couple different VCs, you get them to compete for the deal, and then you go with who you have the best relationship with and who offers you the best term sheet. Unfortunately, with Boxy, the guys decided, beggars can't be choosers. We've got to fund this thing. We'll talk to anybody. And so Avner was flying around the globe talking to infrastructure companies that had never invested in the consumer internet space, companies that really had no business investing in Boxy. Eventually, we landed with Fred Wilson and Bijan Sabet, and Avner got along really well with them. He said, it would be great to work with you. Here's our terms. And they said, no, thanks. So a couple of weeks go by. Avner comes back and says, it looks like a really good idea for us to work together. You've got the Twitter thing. We're doing the social thing. How about it? No, thanks. So he goes back a third time. Guys, this is a no-brainer. It would be great to work with you. No, thanks. So finally, on the fourth try, we were able to raise a round of funding, our Series A, from these guys. And Avner says it was just because he wore them down. But it definitely takes persistence. And even with something like Boxy, which I, as a media center person who followed the space, I saw it and I went, wow, this is great. This is exactly what we need. VCs weren't convinced until we went back and over again. Now, the Series B did work exactly like it was supposed to. And we had a lot of guys from the Series A who said, oh, yeah, we would love to invest now. But just to say, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you've got to persevere through them. So as far as building a team, I wish this photo was a little clearer. This is our intern, Scott, in the bottom, wearing his Incubus t-shirt. And we told him on his first day that it was a tradition at Boxy that we have a Wear Your Favorite Rock Band t-shirt that day. Meanwhile, everybody else at Boxy was celebrating Scott's arrival by wearing a suit. So he came in and he was absolutely mortified. So we still have fun. These are all the guys in the New York office. But I think as we look at hiring, certainly culture plays a big role, and personality plays a big role, and it's probably one of the major things that we look for especially with a company that's so small. We have about 13 people here in the U.S. The people that we bring on have to represent the Boxy DNA. They have to be totally bought into the vision. They have to be able to speak to it. They have to be able to own it and add to it. And so that's one of the major things that we look for when we hire. And we have to keep in mind also, we're working across 3 cities, across 2 continents, across 3 time zones. We have an office in San Francisco, in New York, and Tel Aviv. So the guys in Tel Aviv are usually on conference calls until 2 or 3 in the morning. I take conference calls at 6 a.m. And it's a struggle, one that has to be met with, let's say, process and a good deal of humility. And I think those are also things that we take into account when we hire people. But as we look at the people that we bring on, so I mentioned culture is probably one of the most important things that we look for. We generally take the account that somebody's past doesn't necessarily dictate what they're going to be able to do. And certainly I can speak to that personally because I'd been a consultant my entire life up until I joined Boxy. And I thought I was working hard at my previous job. Now I run marketing, public relations, and events for Boxy. And I probably have never worked as hard in my life, and I have never enjoyed work as much as I do now. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people in this room probably feel. So what we were really looking for is people who could learn what they needed to learn and get shit done, and who fit in with the company. We wanted people who were passionate about the space. We wanted people who, were not only passionate about Media Center software, but also about Boxy, who were users, who were big fans, who shared the vision, who didn't want to use anybody else. And when we looked at it, we also wanted people who would be attractive to other people. So one of the people that we brought on was the founder of Vimeo, Zach Klein. Zach is an amazing product manager, and he's enabled us to bring on a variety of people from inside of his network, whether it's our illustrator, our web designer. We just brought on the lead visual designer from Google, Jamie Devine. So bringing on talent that enabled us to go out and get more talent was also key. Avner likes to say, or told me that poaching was better than recruiting. He said if you are unhappy with your job and looking to move, or you're unemployed, that your motives are muddled. So if I am unhappy with my current job and I'm just looking for a change, then Boxy is great because it's a change, not necessarily because it's Boxy. Or if I'm unemployed and I need a paycheck, Boxy is great because it's a paycheck, not because it's Boxy. So he said 90% of the time, the people that he is going after, and he poached me away from my PR company, were people that were already out in the field, content with what they were doing, but for his purposes, that's where he had to look to find the top talent that he wanted. How am I doing on time? Good? Okay. So as a startup, we don't spend any money on advertising. We spend very little money on sponsorships. It's all word of mouth. It's all public relations. And I think for most startups, that's probably how it should be. As we look at the space, one of the things that really stood out for us was that what's best for our users was going to be best for us, and that was the way that we saw being able to make a real differentiator between us and, let's say, Apple and Microsoft, was that we always included the users in our decisions and put them near the top of the list. And this goes back to running user surveys. For example, in the Boxy box, there's no extra hard drive because it increases cost, and chances are most of the people who are playing media already have a place to store it. We didn't want to do, we thought about doing a really cool stackable design where you could buy a hard drive that would just stack into the bottom of the Boxy box. but that would have been proprietary, and it would have forced users to buy that specific piece of hardware rather than just use what they already have. So it's things like that that we think about, and that's something that definitely has set us apart from a lot of the other competitors in the space, and it's something that I think we continue to strive to do. So I made up this little "what would users do" band. I'm pretty happy with my Photoshop skills there. And one of the great ways of doing this has been actually using Jira. So we use Jira for our bug tracking and issue tracking software, and honestly creating that kind of open relationship with our customers so they can log in and see the issues they've submitted, see where they stand with them. We use it as part of our application submission process. So it's been a great tool in creating transparency and also just getting stuff done. So one of the things that I asked Avner when we were preparing for this is, what do you, so he mentioned that we put the user first, but what does that really mean in terms of the way that we communicate? And what he said was, simply, we just try to be really honest with our users about what's going on in the company, about what we're working on, about how we want them to be included in the roadmap. And I think that is definitely one thing that creates loyalty and helps create the community at Boxy. We also are not walking advertisements. So when I write an email to our users, I always pretend it's my best friend Bobby. And it's like, hey man, I've got this really cool new feature. We're doing this. Things are going really well. And that kind of mindset really helps in creating a person at the end of this email, as opposed to this is just part of my job. And this is something that needs to go out to this nameless mass of emails. So I think that's one thing that we've really focused on, is trying not to be an advertisement, trying not to be a corporation, just trying to be like we're relating to real human beings. So the same probably goes for press. So when I interact with press, it's on a very human level. And I think one of the things that's worked really well in our favor is that if you can talk to the press and build a rapport with them and convince them that you're a group of guys who are just friends, who are trying to accomplish this vision and accomplish this dream, that creates in them a sense of wanting to see you succeed. And we're really lucky at Boxy that a lot of the press are actually Boxy users. So in addition to J.J. Abrams, which I found out, and I was like, yes. So having that direct relationship with them, I think has been really helpful. And I picked up something, actually, as we were interviewing candidates. I noticed that there were those candidates who would continually email or call and be like, hey, so just wanted to check in. Are you going to hire me? Is there a decision coming? And they got really obnoxious, especially when you have like 20 of these people just kind of pinging you, wanting to know what's up. The good ones were the ones who said, hey, saw this story and thought of you. Hope all's well. And just left it at that. And I think you can get a lesson there for talking with press, that you're a resource to them, not only for your own company, but also for the industry that you work in. And so don't feel scared to just send them an email and say, hey, I saw this story, wondered if you wanted to comment, wondered if you had heard the news. I've done that a couple times, and reporters have been like, wow, I didn't see this, thanks so much. And anything you can do to create that rapport, and once again reinforce, this is not just an email address that you get letters from. I'm a real human being. I'm happy to help you out. Would love to have drinks, kind of build up that rapport. So these are, I think we'll skip this, but these are just some of the things that we think about when we pitch press. Conflict has been one of the major drivers for us. So I think it's a temptation for a lot of companies to try and create conflict, and I think on the whole that most people see through that. But for us, there was this very real David and Goliath type moment with Hulu, and it got us quite a bit of press and kind of established Boxy as a leader in the space. But I think if we could do it all over again, we would much rather have just had a Hulu app on Boxy and not had any of the conflict there. But we'll see what happens in the future. So if I've got time, I was just going to talk about a little of what we see as the future of TV. Okay, so I promise we'll get to beer shortly. So the way we see it, TV is essentially just going to become one more connected screen. It doesn't make sense for all these proprietary networks like cable, satellite, IPTV to exist and for companies to create specific encoded versions for this platform and this platform and this platform and this platform. It's like building different websites for IE, for Firefox, or Safari. We all hate it. And so we see the future as really just the internet being the platform, and whether it's your mobile, your PC, or your TV, or your iPad, they're all just different screens that access that content. So you see access and content being separated. There's a couple interesting stories in this area. One is that France has done an amazing job of deregulating their telecom industry. In 2007 in France, you could get VoIP, IPTV, and internet at, I think it was 20 megabit per second for $40 a month. We are way behind. We are way behind. You look at Japan and Korea, and definitely we're lagging there. And what's created that is competition. Competition for the pipes, competition for the content, and so the only way for that to really happen is for those to separate and for networks to open up. We see Apple and Microsoft competing with Comcast and Time Warner. Comcast currently has 23.5 million subscribers. Apple has 160 million of our credit cards. You do the math there. If Apple decided to offer a subscription service that gave you access to everything in the iTunes library in terms of video and movie content for 40, 50, 60 bucks a month, they could really easily become a huge competitor. Same thing with Microsoft, although Xbox isn't quite as ubiquitous. I think we're talking 40 million worldwide, Xbox 360 sold. But they have a device already in your living room that's capable of delivering internet video, and they do with Netflix and a variety of other different providers. So both of those guys, I'm sure we will see step up to the plate and start delivering video to the living room. So I don't know about the curling channel. I was joking. I was just at the eBay developer conference, and I thought, maybe there's a Ruby on Rails channel. But essentially, what we're seeing on Boxy is that the main drivers of usage are mainstream content, just like you would imagine. So TV show library, Netflix, Pandora, all the stuff that we consume in general on a daily basis. But there is this encroaching long-tail content. I don't even know if you can call it long-tail anymore, but you look at things like Revision 3, My Damn Channel, Coldcast TV, all of these networks that produce web-only content are becoming bigger and bigger. Websites like We Are Hunted, which is an aggregator of music from around the web, are starting to become more and more popular on Boxy. And so that long tail of content is slowly bubbling up and becoming really popular. We see freemium as the best way to go about this for most providers. You think about the way that we watch TV now. One of the business models that we're really interested in is, for most people, you're probably buying a DVD or renting it from Netflix or downloading an entire season of a show and watching it all at once, rather than just waiting each week for a new episode to arrive. We think a really cool business model is, take 10 episodes of a show, release each episode ad-supported on a weekly basis. If by week 3 you're totally addicted and you can't wait, spend $10 and buy the rest of the season. I think that fits with usage models. It fits with what users want. So you're able to get to it for free. If you're willing to wait, you can. If you want to pay for it, you can, and you can watch the rest of it right away. So we think you'll see more and more business models that are driven like that. This is what happens when you convert Keynote to PowerPoint. So we will likely spend as much, if not more, tomorrow than we do today in terms of entertainment. There was a really interesting study done by Magid & Associates on Views users. So Views is the most popular P2P client. They were 35% more likely, they would go to the movies 35% more often than a normal person. They would rent movies 25% more. They bought 35% more DVDs. They spent more on their televisions and their home theater setups. And they were 50% more social than an average user, than an average person. So what that tells me is these are the perfect customers. And the industry is not meeting that need. And so really what we see is once those mechanisms are in place to provide for people like that to get access to all that they want to at a reasonable rate, then content will really flourish, content providers will make more money, and you'll see more options for consumers. So as we look at how we find content, on TV it's mostly with the up-down button. On the web, it's through social networks. It's through aggregators like Redux and Magma and the front page of YouTube. They're very different paradigms, and there's got to be some interesting mix of a way to bring all the stuff that's on the internet, where literally you have millions and millions of videos to watch, to the TV screen in a way that's productive and personalized. So that's one of the things that Boxy's tried to do through our social networking is make it really easy for you to get video that's personalized to you through Facebook, through Twitter, through Google Buzz, through other Boxy users, directly onto your home screen. So you can channel surf through that instead of just kind of hunting and pecking through content that maybe you've never heard of before. But there's tons of room for innovation in this space. We really see the future as kind of one powerful open box that will connect you to that will connect to the TV and bring in content from the cloud. So whether that is an internet connected TV with a PC architecture behind it, or a set-top box, or a PC that's just connected to your TV, one of those platforms will work for you, and that will be essentially all you need. So the future of TV is really that there is no TV. There are just different size screens, and we really see the future of kind of web and TV as being a standard markup language for the TV screen, similar to what you see in mobile today. So I can build a mobile site that renders properly on Android, on iPhone, on BlackBerry. In the same way, you'll be able to build a website, a version of your website, that plays on a Samsung TV, that plays on an LG TV, that plays on Android OS, that plays on Boxy. And it's just a matter of time before those standards get adopted and put into place. So that'll be slow. Currently, I think I ran the numbers this morning. ESPN makes $3 a subscriber. There's 23.5 million subscribers on Comcast. So they're making $70 million alone from Comcast, plus another $441 million from ads, plus Time Warner, plus Cox, plus all the other cable providers that they're available on. So we're talking close to $1 billion just on advertising and subscriptions from cable networks. That is a paycheck that is not, they're not going to sacrifice anytime soon. But what will happen is essentially that 22-year-old who just graduated college and thinks paying for cable is dumb will just go online and watch the games on a streaming service. He'll download them after they're done. He'll subscribe to MLB or he'll subscribe to NHL and just stream the game as it's happening. And they'll start to lose more and more of those younger viewers until the point where it comes that we've got to move online to address this audience with things like ESPN 360, improving that service and really making it top-notch. So, any errors in my presentation can be submitted to jira.boxy.tv. I'm at academic on Twitter, and there's my email address in case you want to get in touch. But thank you guys very much for coming out.